We're actually looking at that very issue right now with the next round of funding. I believe that it is that we would like to have everybody be able to apply for every round of funding and thus get another round, but we have to make sure that's okay with GoBiz.
You're saying that you would like to increase the grant amount above 50K, but you have to...
No, I'm so sorry. This question is asking whether or not the next round, and so after this is all done, or in 22-23, will they be able to be an applicant that can apply for another 50,000 round for the next round?
Well, so it's two parts, right? I think we first have to decide if they can get more than 50,000. And then the next question is, what pot of money is that going to come from? So I think right now the maximum amount that you can get is 50K, and then we'll have to make a determination about which pot of money that comes from. Does that make sense? Hopefully that answers the question. Okay, next question. My budget has been approved by the underwriter, but is going through the final approval process through the county. March expenditures were included in the approved budget. Will the budget need to be reworked since it is more than likely the check will be issued in April? I would have to say most likely, because remember, you cannot use grant funds to pay for expenses in the past. This is not a reimbursement program. So if you're not in a position where you can wait to pay your expenditures until April or when the final check will be issued, if you have to pay those expenditures before you get your check, then yes, you're going to have to include new expenses on your budget that have not already been paid for. William, anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's exactly accurate. Our purchasing agent and county council will not let it move forward if there are expenses that are retroactive.
Correct. All right. Next question. From the time that the grant documents are accepted for processing, what is the approximate time to receive a determination? And so if I could amend that question, I think because the grant documents are only processed after your budget has been approved. So once your budget is approved, we then create the grant documents. And once the grant documents are created, we send a copy to you for your review with your underwriter, and we also send a copy to Mendocino County to be uploaded to Cobblestone. And William, would you like to take them through the Cobblestone process?
Oh, not if I can avoid it. It is a little bit of a headache for me. Cobblestone is, I don't want it to be the bogeyman of this process, because in reality it is simply a computer program that tracks the grants as they move through the approval process. I would have to pop open a grant agreement to review it perfectly, but if I can remember correctly, it has to move through our purchasing agent, it has to move through county council, it has to move through the executive office, it has to move through the contracting team, it has to move through risk for insurance review, and then it goes back to the accountants and Munis to get it processed for payment. And so, like we've always said, it has to move through roughly 7 departments before it can be approved. And I think that there's a little bit of misnomer in the community that, well, Kristen was granted the ability to approve these documents, or these agreements, I should say. She merely is supplanting the Board of Supervisors approval. It still is required to be approved by several departments, the 7 that we've talked about. And that is California state law, that's purchasing law. We cannot issue this amount of funding without having the appropriate approvals. And there's nothing we can really do about a lot of it because it's so hard coded into our state statutes.
Great. And so from the time that your grant agreement is uploaded to Cobblestone and it's routed through each of the different departments, each department can take anywhere from 48 to a week to review. And so at the longest, it would probably be about a 30 to 60-day process for the grant agreement to be approved. And so from the time that you're first uploaded to Cobblestone till it goes through the routing of all of the different departments, we're looking at 30 to 60 days before a check is actually cut.
Correct, and that is assuming that everything goes flawlessly. If anything is made that is made a critical error, so as insurance is past due, or if there's something in the budget that doesn't align with the scope, it potentially could start all over again, that entire clock of counting down of approvals.
Great. All right, next question. After we receive the direct grant money or check, how would you like us to submit our receipts? Is there a format that you want us to use? Excel spreadsheet with receipts, for example. So we actually have a database where we call it our expense app, where every grant recipient will have an account set up on the expense app, and you'll be able to upload your receipts to that expense app. And so we'll work with everyone one-on-one to make sure you understand that upload process. And most likely at the next LEAP program meeting, we'll take you through a demonstration of that. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you, Paul.
Next question. How many $50,000 grant checks have been issued by the county to date? William?
2. And then we have another 2 in queue right now with the auditor.
Great. All right, next question. California requires F1 occupancy buildings to have ADA compliance. This is required even if there are no employees. This is a barrier to entry for cannabis businesses. So I'm not sure what the question is. I think we would have to verify, William, I don't know if you know off the top of your heads, whether or not F1 occupancy buildings are required to be ADA compliant. I would have to research that.
I would have to research that as well, but we will have an answer for the next meeting, if not sooner.
Sounds great. Next question. Thank you for answering my question regarding the budget. I will need to send a revised budget to exclude March expenditures. Is this going to delay the approval process with the county since I need to submit a revised budget? Does the revised budget have to go through underwriting again? The answer is yes. I don't know where you are in the approval process, so I can't tell you whether or not it would be delayed. What I would require or request that you do is to send me an email and include your underwriter on that email, and we'll be able to give you a better sense of the timing. Okay, next question. If after an approved budget has been funded and the applicant finds a cheaper bid, can the new bid and contractor be used instead? Yes, but you do have to submit the new bid and the new contractor name to your underwriter, and we would have to look to see how your budget would need to be reallocated with the extra funds that you would not be using since you got a lower bid. But we'd have to work with you one-on-one on that particular scenario.
But yes, it's totally possible, and I know this is coming up a lot with the recent supply chain issues, and trust me, it's been affecting us locally as well. If you go to Home Depot and they don't have it, can you go to Freedman's and buy it? Absolutely, you're approved to buy it. And so you just have to make sure that you track it and you report it back to us properly.
Correct. All right.
Well, that ends all of the, we have one more popping up. We'll cover this one, and then I know we have one telephone question.
Okay. Next question. Will we need to resubmit our budget proposals due to changes? Will we be notified as soon as our approval meeting is scheduled? So if your budget proposal changes before you get the grant check, all you need to do is revise your budget, work with your underwriter, and we'll make sure that the budget is approved as a part, the revised budget is approved as a part of your grant agreement. If your budget changes after your grant agreement has been approved and signed, then you'll have to work with your underwriter to make what we call a budget modification. It'll be the same process that William just discussed. If things change, you just need to notify us of the change.
Yeah, on this point, I had a question from one of my clients about when does Cobblestone notify and how notify the applicant that their check is ready or will be processed. Some folks have to go quite a ways to get to their PO box and wanted to know if there's some kind of notification.
Absolutely. Okay, so that is a really important question. I'm glad you asked it because there's 2 ways that we can do this. When you submit your W-9, that is the address it will go to. And when your check is ready to be processed, when it's ready to be issued, you'll be getting a phone call and or best practices and an email from me, William Riley. So I'm sorry, Bruce, the second part of that,
Oh, you covered it. It was how are they notified that the check is ready and that they should check their mailbox to know that the money is coming. Given we put a wide range of 30 to 60 days, they would want to be notified. So an email and a phone call from you will be best practices. Thank you.
Correct. And so what I was going to touch on, so I answered Bruce's question, but the other thing that we can do is if you are concerned about your mail or you're concerned about your receipt of your check, we always can hold the check locally for your pickup. You just have to make sure that you let the lead team know that that's the path that you want to take, because it is not easy for us to hold a check from the auditor. We have to know about it at least 2 weeks in advance from the check being issued. So that is an option as well.
But otherwise, the check will be mailed to the address that you put on your W-9. Okay? Just so people are clear about that. All right, next question. What documentation should you provide for the hiring of a new employee? William, you wanted to answer that one?
I do believe that you have to provide a live scan for a new employee. Other than that, I'm not entirely sure there's any documentation required besides the live scan.
Great. Next question. This is not a complete sentence, and so the person might want to resubmit this question. I'll read it, but I won't be able to answer it. Due to your changes to submitting. So if somebody, maybe you're talking about making an amendment to your budget, but if you could retype that question, that would be great. Thank you very much. Next question. Why have no additional checks been issued in the last 3 weeks since the 2 checks were reported in the supervisor's meeting many weeks ago?
I was not a part of that meeting, and I'm not sure when that was reported in the meeting, but I do know that we've been giving statistics to the Board of Supervisors, and the why is more of a global issue. We're currently staffing up in cannabis. We're moving towards getting more staff, and checks are going out. Unfortunately, they're not going out as fast as I would like. They're not going as fast as the applicants would like, and I completely appreciate that. And we recognize that, and we are staffing up currently, but it is also a global problem. The county is currently at very low staffing as well, and so it's, we're trying to help each other out here.
Right. And the other thing I will tell you that the budget approval process has definitely slowed things down, which is why, we spent time in today's webinar talking to folks about how to get their budgets approved more quickly. So if you guys could adhere to some of those best practices, I think it would also speed things up.
All right.
Next question.
Sorry, there's more.
Yeah. So next question, how long do we have to cash the check once it's been received?
That is a technical answer, and it's written right on the check, I do believe.
Say that again, William. You broke up just a little bit.
Oh, I am so sorry. I wanted to get up to grab some documentation just so I can answer this very clearly, because I have had this mistake myself personally. The checks that are issued the same way that we get reimbursements. So if an employee has to spend money in the field, I used to be a social worker, and so every once in a while I would buy the children that I was with like lunch. And so it's the exact same as a reimbursement. It's 6 months from the date of the check issuance. After that point, the check will no longer be valid. So if you get your check January 1st, please cash it before June 1st.
And best business practices for small business owners is you should always cash your check as soon as you get it. Things get lost, things get misplaced, things get misunderstood. And so if you have the wherewithal to get to the bank and cash the check as soon as possible, I would really, really, really recommend that. Okay, next question. Yes, will we need to resubmit with you new requirements? So I think the question that's being asked, if your budget changes before your Cobblestone agreements have been issued, I would say that you should redo your budget before the check gets issued. And then if your budget changes after your check has been issued, then you should go through our budget modification process. And we'll talk to you about that more in the next webinar. Okay.
We are going to move to the call-in caller, and I am sorry that you've had your hand up for so long, Paul. Let me get you here. You are now able to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm here with my partner Susan as well, and we have a few questions. I'll let Susan go first.
Hi, William. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, particularly for the excellent slides. We hope these will be available to us in viewable archival form. Next, wondering what the actual plan is to get through the 200 or so applicants by the new deadline of August, if you're only reviewing a maximum of 5 to 10 projects a week, not approving, reviewing. So wondering what that plan is. And finally, as we move into the next grant cycle, our understanding is that LEAP does its valuable work in LA and Oakland. It seems to ignore the fixed seasonal situation of rural Northern California, Mendocino County. Our budgets are completely dependent on seasonal sun-grown crops. And sometimes there is a huge lag between approval and actually receiving money. There is also a real problem with working with contractors with availability. So sometimes we've got to lock somebody in 5-6 months before we receive that check. As we go into the next grant cycle, would you please take a look at the vast differences between us in Mendocino County and more urban situations like LA and Oakland? Thanks for answering my questions. And Paul?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones that actually received a check. I was advised to wait until I get the funding before I make any modifications to my budget. There were some things that needed to happen, some things that it just passed. You know, the time for that passed. The prices of materials change, the contractor's availability change, because it took 9 months for me to actually come in to sign the document. If I make a modification to my budget after I receive the funds, is it going to have to go through Cobblestone again? Is it going to take another 9 months for me to get an answer, to get approval for these items that I have to reprioritize? Or in fact, add new things and disqualify them? Because there's a number of things where I might have to redo the budget altogether, and it's important that it be done in a timely manner. And I actually don't have much faith that that's going to happen. So I, as you said, I was under the understanding, because it did not specify anything about Cobblestone in the resolution that was given to the Board of Supervisors and unanimously approved. It said that all that Kristen had to do was put it up on the website and submit it to the Board of Supervisors, and it was a done deal. So is that process going to be allowable for a modification to the budget after I've received the funds?
So Paul, you're saying you'd like to modify your budget before you start spending the money. Is that the core of your question? And what's the process for doing that?
There are some items that are that will prevail, that will still, I will still need to use. There are other items that I will need to change.
Okay.
For instance, I understand there's a movement afoot to allow allocations for taxes to be used. That's why my budget changed in the first place. I had to remove some things so that I could include the taxes. After I did that, I was told that that county council reviewed a Board of Supervisors meeting, and they didn't say specifically that taxes could be included, even though they could, but because they didn't say it, I had to pull it off of my budget. Now, if they're going to include the taxes again, I think they're revisiting it, because I guess they're projecting that the cannabis program is going to be losing $3.5 million. So now they're getting nasty or antsy about it, because it's the money that they care about, really, not the people. So if they do that, how long is it going to take for me to revise the budget so I can reallocate the funds?
I think So we don't know the timing of whether or not the county is going to approve taxes, right? That's going to go through a long process. I'm not even going to try to sugarcoat it and say that we will know next week. So if you want to wait until that approval process happens, which could take 2 or 3 months, you obviously have the, you can do that. If you want to start spending money from your budget on some of the items that are not taxes, you can do that also. So, you know, I don't know if you're asking if you should wait until taxes are approved before you start spending, or what your question is exactly with regards to taxes. Are you saying you'd rather wait?
What my question is how long is it going to take? What's the process for modifying the budget? Because if it's going to take 3 or 4 months for them to approve the taxation when they get around to it, and then it's going to take another 6 months to for it to go through the Cobblestone process before we can do that. I mean, how long is it going to take to modify that if it's an approved an eligible item? Like if they deem that that the taxes are eligible, then would that have to go through the entire Cobblestone process, even though it's already known that it's an eligible item?
Paul, I just have a quick question. Has he deposited the check? Paul, have you actually deposited the check into your account as Paula recommended? Okay.
Yes.
So the check's already been deposited. You have the money under your control currently.
Correct.
Okay.
So I have a bit of a simple answer for that.
Exactly.
If it's within the scope of work, you do not need to go back through the Cobblestone process. Like I gave the example earlier of if you can't find it at Home Depot, you can get it at Lowe's. It's still approved that you're getting the it. Now, if you're adding an it, and in your case, taxes, that will need to go back through the Cobblestone process.
Even though it's an approved and an eligible item.
But it's not approved, Paul. That's one of the problems.
Let's assume that it does go through the 4-month process, and it is.
But it isn't. That's what we're struggling with in answering your question. Taxes have not been approved.
All right, let's give a hypothetical. Let's suppose that in 3 months they are approved.
Okay.
Would that modification process then still have to go through Cobblestone and have to wait another 6 months?
Yes.
Yes.
That's ridiculous. Thank you. And then there were some other questions that Susan had.
William, everybody, I hope you will then pivot back and answer the questions that I had on behalf of not just us, but many other farmers. Would you like me to repeat those?
Let me see if I remember them. So the first one is, will this be available for public consumption at a later time? Yes, it is. This is currently being live streamed on YouTube and will be available at a future date. I'm not sure. YouTube processes a little bit, so I'm not sure if it pops up immediately, but also it'll be available with closed captioning at a future date as well. I believe your next question was, how do we expect to pay out prior to August when the round ends? And that is, we are staffing up in a major way. And so we expect to exponentially grow. And then I don't remember your other 2 questions, Susan, if you could repeat them.
Yes, thank you very much, William. The final consideration, we hope, will bear heavily on the next grant cycle. We understand that LEAP is doing its good work in Los Angeles and Oakland. Those are urban if they're anything else. However, LEAP seems either willfully, or I don't know if it's willful or not, but there seems to be a lack of understanding that for us in northern Mendocino County and this whole area, we work within a seasonal situation. We are in a rural environment. Our budgets that we put together, say in October of last year, are completely dependent on seasonal sun-grown crops. So if we are not able to move forward and change the whole reimbursement situation, if we're not going to be able to work with people who understand the difference between Mendocino County and Oakland and LA, it just seems, we don't understand this, and we wish you would take our situation into account instead of assuming that, one size fits all and we're just like LA or Oakland. we're not. We can't get availability for certain kinds of contractors or services on a dime. We have to book months and months in advance. And that's how the budgets were originally put together. So, what's your feeling about this, William? Is this something that we can work together on and make it, a little more applicable to us?
I appreciate your question, Susan. And what I can say is that I have faith in the Elevate team, and I was not here in October. I'm now here, and I am going to make sure that that specific piece is taken into account. I do understand very deeply that we have a great deal more of farms, essentially, than other jurisdictions, like you referenced of Oakland and Los Angeles. Well, Los Angeles is great to grow things. Good luck finding land to do it on, right? So I completely understand, and I completely want to work within those bounds that farmers do have, the seasonal bounds that they must follow. And so I completely hear that, and we're going to take that into account. Yeah.
Yeah, I would only add to that, William, that Susan, thank you for bringing that up. I'm a member of the Elevate Impact team. I was raised in Mendocino County. I'm very familiar with the issues that we face of my neighbors and former classmates. I think a lot of the things you're referring to are the timing of the cycles. First of all, the issue regarding the expense reimbursement is a state statute. And that's not something the county can decide. And that's something that GoBiz has stipulated. I'm sorry, for reimbursement of expenses, Paul? That's what
I spoke with Fiona Lavelle, and she said that the reimbursement is not a state required stipulation.
For everybody, Fiona Lavelle is head of GoBiz. It's where Nicole Elliott started. You can believe them when they give that information.
She's the head of the equity program, the assistant deputy. Yeah.
I may have misspoke, Paul. Thank you we'll check that. It may be a county requirement.
It is. And in fact, in other jurisdictions, they use reimbursement exclusively to keep tabs on it. So they won't even disperse the money until you show them the receipt that has been paid.
Yeah, Sacramento has a reimbursement program. I apologize for interrupting, Bruce. So different pockets of money have different rules. So we would have to go back and confirm which pocket of money allows for reimbursement and which pocket of money does not. There are definitely state programs that allow for reimbursement, and there are state programs that don't. So let us double check the GoBiz funding, equity funding rules, because they may have different rules than some of the other state reimbursement programs.
Right. Well, when I spoke with Fiona Laval, she said that the reimbursement was definitely a local issue, and I wish that the county would rethink that because of the timing, because of the delays in the program, and because of the seasonal aspects of the seasonal part of this work of what we're doing is seasonal and time sensitive.
Yeah, Paul, again, we'll need to double check that with the state because that was not what our understanding was. So we'll get back to you on that.
Thank you, Paula.
Yeah.
Thank you, William.
Thanks.
All right, Paul. Susan, Paul, thank you for calling in. Out of respect for everyone else, I am going to mute you guys and move on to other people now. And again, thank you so much for calling.
Well, thank you.
How does this work? There it is. All right, so let's move into, I'm going to unmute Monique Ramirez to allow her to talk. And then we're going to move back into the Q&As that are typing. All right, Monique, I have unmuted you.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm just curious if there's any hope at all that the county may be able to go back and amend this whole thing to allow us to put into our budget about taxes at the federal level. I'm just really, really concerned about my personal medical status with Medi-Cal. And once I receive this check, I'm going to lose my health benefits. And it makes me want to cry because I'm really freaking out right now and I need my insurance. And I'm also curious, like what happened?
Monique, are you still there?
Tax returns and we don't have the physical money to pay for it because our business doesn't do as great as we had hoped. Many farmers are not even able to sell any product right now. We're getting prices that are not even going to keep them in business. And so I'm just curious, like, what would happen in that situation? And I'm just really concerned because I know that the spirit of this whole thing is to really help operators and to hopefully give back to those that have, been affected deeply by the war on drugs. And the last thing I want to see is cultivators find themselves in a completely awful financial hardship, owing back taxes to the IRS based on just taking this funding. And I don't know if you guys have a crystal ball or could speak to this, but I'm really curious if there is any possible sliver of hope that this kind of thing might be able to change. Thank you.
Monique, can you please repeat the first part of your second part of your question? You cut out a little bit. I got the part about talking to the IRS.
Yeah, it's just more about the county being able to go back. I know that it has been somewhat investigated and that the answer so far is that no, we cannot allocate money in our budget to set aside to pay for taxes that are incurred by accepting the money. This is different than those wanting to use the money to pay for cannabis cultivation taxes with the county. And so and I know that there's still a lot of discussion happening. I know Paul Hansberry has been really active to try to get state answers. And so I'm just curious if you guys have any possible leads that this may end up changing for us in the future. Because, as I do get the funding, what I would want to do is then set aside some of my budget and not spend it on some of the things in the hopes that I could then go back and allocate those things towards taxes. As things continue to unfold, since we still have a whole year to get to that finish line.
Okay, thank you for your comments and questions. We currently have several proposals out to the state, actually, to GoBiz, specifically Fiona Lavelle, in order to ascertain whether or not that would be an approved budget allocation. So startup costs, the true-up cost, but also your personal income taxes as related to accepting the grant. And so once we hear back from the state, we'll be able to move forward on that. We'll have a good answer for you. But I assure you, we are following up with the state, and that is something that we're very interested in seeing if it's possible. Now, to answer your second part of your question, this does give me a little bit of heartburn, and it is playing into the federal tax piece. And I do have to remind everyone on the call, no matter how we all feel about cannabis, it is still Schedule I illegal. And so I have a lot of apprehension or hesitation that the federal IRS will actually allow any allocation or any amount to be offset on the federal income taxes. It's not impossible, but let us ask rather than you guys. I wouldn't want somebody to have the unfortunate experience of having the IRS cross them in some bizarre way. So I will make sure that we follow up on that. Thank you very much for your questions, Monique.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right, let's move back to the typed in questions.
All right, I'll go ahead and go back to the list. Okay, what if the cost of the budget item goes up after the quote expires? Again, if the quote was approved in your budget, you are allowed to spend money on that item, even if the price goes up. Obviously, you'll have less left over to expend on other items, but you can still purchase the item even if the price goes up, if it was on your approved budget.
So
go ahead.
We can't award any additional money due to inflation or increasing costs, but it's okay, like Paula said, if you have the ability to flex it. So.
To reallocate from one item to another, absolutely. All right, next question. What happens if an applicant is ultimately denied a cannabis permit after going through the portal process, but the denial happens after reviewing the grant funding? What would happen in that case? So you have to have a existing permit. You cannot apply for a grant with an expired permit. So unless I'm misunderstanding your question, you have to have your cannabis permit first before you apply for the grant. And the cannabis permit has to be in, in working status. It cannot be an expired permit. You must have that before you apply for the grant. Okay, next question. How long do we have to complete all the work on the budget with the funds provided? William, is there an expiration date on when the monies have to be spent by? I don't think there is, but I should double check.
So there technically is. It's 1 year from the date you sign it. And so if I send out a grant agreement and you sign it on March, that's last week, on March 18th, you have until March 18th, 2023.
Great. So it's 1 year from when the grant agreement is signed. Okay, excellent. Next question. What budget items are approved? A list would help so that if reallocation is needed, there will be a roadmap. Some grants allow for a budget item, miscellaneous materials and supplies, that acts as a slush area to change the amounts between approved items. So the Mendocino County does not allow for slush items such as miscellaneous materials and supplies. Every item on the budget has to be clearly identified. If you need to do a reallocation, the easiest thing is to reallocate between approved budget. Between approved budget items. If you need to reallocate to something that is not on your budget, then you would have to go through a budget modification process. Okay, next question. Is it true that your underwriters work part-time and that is one reason why the applications are a bit slower, to be communicated? Yes, our underwriters work part-time. They're all independent contractors. I'm not sure that's why applications are slower. We are trying to speed up the application process. I think that the way to speed up the application process is to make sure that your budgets are submitted in the format that we discussed earlier today. And I also want to remind everyone that prior to November, I wasn't here. Prior to January, Nina wasn't here. And then prior to last month, our department analyst, Audrey, wasn't here. So as we staff up, that'll be alleviated, hopefully. Absolutely. And we are so excited that you guys are staffing up. That's going to really speed things up. So thank you for reminding us, William. Let's see. Next question. When can we get the new system to upload documents, as that is now a new layer we have to learn and put into consideration? Yeah, we will definitely put you guys onto our expense app so that you can upload receipts. And I think I mentioned earlier in the call, we will provide a training on how to use it at the expense app. And hopefully we can do that at the next program meeting in April. That's a good idea, Paul. Great. Is grant money taxable? Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I was about to read that one to you. So is the grant money taxable? State, federal, local? Go ahead. It is potentially considered taxable income. Is it taxable as a one-time expense? Not that we're aware of, but unfortunately it can be considered taxable income. Yes, grant money is definitely taxable. Okay. How can we check to see if our budgets submitted for grants are correct? Or what is the status for submitted grants? Right now, we submitted a grant request, but I don't know if any of the files/answers are incorrect or missing. So once you have submitted your budgets to your underwriter, the underwriter then will work with you to make sure that the budgets are in compliance with the way that we want the budget submitted. Then once the budgets have been reviewed by the underwriter, they're sent to me and Stacy. We are the two people who review the budgets. We review the budgets and make sure that they meet all of the specification that the county requires. Once that is done, we send the budgets to the Mendocino County, Kristen and William, for their review. If they have any questions, they usually type back an email with questions on your budget, which we then send to you. If the budget is approved, they send an email that says the budget has been approved. If the budget is approved, we will draft your grant documents. Those grant documents will be sent to you for review by you with your underwriter. And simultaneously, they'll be uploaded into the Cobblestone system that William discussed earlier. But we will give you feedback once your budgets are submitted by your underwriter. We will then review them. The county will review them. If they are correct, they will be approved. If we have questions, we will let you know about those questions. Okay, Next question. I thought people could apply for funding if they only have an embossed receipt. So you have to have an approved county permit before receiving the funding. I may have misspoke on that, but it was my understanding that you could have either an embossed receipt or a county permit before receiving the funding. That's my understanding. I think before I was only talking about permits, but I think embossed receipts are also eligible.
And also, we will double check that just to make sure, just so we're not misspeaking. I'll ask one of our planning staff and/or Kristen.
Great.
And if you want to come to the Friday meeting, I will have an answer for that one. See how I saw the Friday meeting? Oh, God.
Okay. Next question. What happens if the work is not completed and is still underway at the 12-month after the check issuance date? You should come to us. If you're still working and spending grant funds after 12 months, you should come to us and we should, review whether or not an extension can be granted.
Yeah, if you foresee this being an issue, make sure you let us know as soon as possible. We can work with you on this, and we don't want it to be a penalty. We don't want it to be an issue. And so make sure you notify your underwriter, make sure you notify the cannabis program if you run into this issue.
Great. It would be better to get the new platform for budgets as soon as possible so that we can begin instead of waiting another month. I'll see what I can do.
All right, and we have another call-in question. Oh,
great.
Monique. All right, Monique, I'm going to unmute you.
Hi, thank you. And any apologies for my internet not being so good.
No
I just wanted to respond to Paula's question regarding my question. So if you're an embossed receipt holder, you don't actually have a county permit. You're just in good standing. And so people are going through a portal submission. Some people are starting at the end of this month, and it will open and then close on April 28th. And so there'll still be a whole review process. And during that time, some of those people may have gotten funding from this equity grant and then may later be denied a county permit for whatever reason. And so I'm just curious what would happen in that case if they've already received the check and then now they don't have a permit to operate because unfortunately they didn't meet the requirements of permit process.
Yes. And go ahead, William.
I do not believe that we have an acceptable answer for that at this time. Monique, I'm going to have to research that and get back to you. That is a situation I don't think we had anticipated.
Right.
But
thank you.
I definitely want to get an answer for that. Thank you for asking.
All right. Next question. I don't have any more Q&A, written in Q&A. Do you have any more questions from raised hands, William? I can't see those.
Well, in the interest of brevity, if no more questions come in, maybe we can end early.
Okay. Okay, great. If we don't have any more questions, thank you all for participating, and we'll try to get back to you on the ones that we were not able to answer today as quickly as possible.
Paula, we got one more that came in. Let's cover that, and then we'll call it.
Did I miss?
Right.
Yeah, go for it.
It popped just in. Thomas, I unmuted, or I gave you the ability to unmute.
All right. Yeah. Sorry to be the last. The last question here and extend the meeting. And I'm sorry that if I've already missed this question, I joined a little bit late. Is there any estimate on how long the process takes from budget submission? So, I've submitted what I believe to be a complete packet about a month ago, and I know that there are many people who have done, who have been waiting probably longer, but I'm just trying to get an idea, is it 2 months or whatever? Do you have a good estimate on how long it takes to get approval if everything's correct?
What I can tell you is once a budget has been approved, and we upload it to Cobblestone, from the time that it's uploaded to Cobblestone, it can be somewhere from 30 to 60 days.
Okay, so 30 to 60 days from budget approval. But do you have any estimate on sort of how long it takes from budget submission to budget approval?
I would say budget submission to budget approval is, I would say it's taking about 4 weeks at this point.
All right.
Hopefully that'll speed up. If people, one of the reasons we went through the budget process today is hoping that people can submit documents that are closer to being ready to be approved. But at this point, getting budget approval done is taking about 4 weeks, but hopefully we'll get that, a little bit more approval a little bit more quickly if people submit budgets in their correct format.
Got you. Okay. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, I'm going to add on a question.
Sure.
As I go through the submission portal, I don't see a functionality where I can, save my work and then come back to that, log back in and then submit more documents. Am I correct in my understanding that that function is not available, or am I missing something?
Are you talking about saving your work as a part of the grant application, or are you talking about something different?
As part of the grant application.
You should be able to save your progress before submitting the final grant application. Is that not working for you?
No.
Okay. Can you shoot me? Go ahead.
As an applicant, I was able to do that, log back in. But once receiving the authorization and the applicant number, and then going through the grant, submission process, I'm missing that functionality if it's there.
So thank you for clarifying. If you have not submitted your grant application, you can save your work. If you have already submitted your grant application, I don't think you can go back in and change it. That functionality is not there. So let me see, I can talk to my web developer and see after you've hit the submit button, can you go back in? I don't think that functionality is there, but the question is, can we enable that functionality? And I'll have to research that.
Okay, thank you. But actually my question is, what if we're sort of halfway through it and then, I've got to go and we've got to get some more documents. Do we need to keep that screen open, or is there any way that, we can save our work like in the, DCC site, CDFA site, and then, come back to it, if we're missing
documents? You should be able to save your progress if you have not yet submitted your application. You should be able to save your progress and come back to it later. And is that functionality? So in the interest of time, shoot me an email, Tom, and I can look into this for you offline. I don't want to take the group because it might just be something unique to your situation. So
okay,
if you want to shoot me, and please send me the email that you use to register your grant application. Okay, because people have a lot of different emails.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, Paula, we had a type in question.
Okay.
If rent is a line item on a budget, what kind of supporting invoice should be supplied that will meet grant needs?
The lease. Show you all of the leases that most of the people who have submitted rent as a part of their budget, send us the lease also, because the lease, one of the paragraphs in the lease agreement tells you what your monthly rent is. And we can see that it's been signed, and then the address on the lease should match the address that you are applying for rent for. The same is true with the mortgage. If you are applying for the grant to pay for part of your mortgage payment, we should see the mortgage document, which clearly articulates what the monthly mortgage payment should be. That's always outlined in your mortgage documents.
All right. And then it looks like Paul and Susan have their hand back up.
Great.
Paul, can you unmute?
Hi. Yes. I realize that it's difficult to hire people that want to work for the cannabis program. But we've been hearing for a very long time that you're ramping up. And I know that there's a few extras. But still, I'm wondering how you expect to get through the 200 applications for review, not necessarily approval, by the deadline in August, if you're having that much of a difficulty ramping up.
So, Paul, we're not starting from square zero, right? We don't have 200 remaining applications to review. We're already in the middle of the process of reviewing most of those applications. We're not starting at square zero.
Oh, but then I guess I misunderstood that first slide.
Okay.
The other thing I'll point
those
out,
are applications that have been submitted and we're in the process of reviewing. So if they're in underwriting, they've already begun the review process. Do you want to go back to the numbers, William? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Paul, and to others, as an underwriter who's been at the beginning of this process, the guidelines, the advice, the program administrator, now department heads have changed throughout that time. And so at each point, we've had to adjust how we evaluate the applications. So this has not been a static process. We're hoping we've gotten to a point where it's much more efficient. The fee waiver process is much more streamlined. There's been a learning curve. This is not unusual. As you pointed out, Elevate Impact has worked with other jurisdictions, and they all go through a learning curve where the first 6 to 12 months, it takes a lot longer to get things processed and completed and checks cut. But after a certain point, when it's stabilized, things go much more quickly. And that's kind of where the Mendocino County Department is. We've gone through a learning process. The Board of Supervisors has made adjustments. There's been different guidelines, there's been different leadership. And I think we're at a point of stability plus additional resources that we will be able to process these applications much more quickly.
Okay, because when I'm looking at this slide now, it says completed applications 212.
Correct.
460 and for 416 total applications. So 212 are still waiting for review is the way I read that.
Right. So let me walk you through that. The first category is eligibility. We've received 212 eligibility application. That's the one that says you are eligible to apply for additional resources of the program. Of the eligibility applications, just that first column, we've received 212. 5 are abandoned, so we don't have to review those. 73 are currently in underwriting. We've already started on those. 3 of them have completed underwriting and are going through the approval process, but over half have already been approved. So of the 212 for eligibility, 131 have already been approved and have received their eligibility letters.
What about the other 200?
Well, where's the 416 on the total applications? Where does that come?
That would be all of the applications that we have. Eligibility plus direct grant plus fee waiver plus technical assistance.
Well, don't you have to fill out all 3 of those in order to?
No, a person can, once you receive your eligibility letter, you choose whether or not you want to apply for a direct grant, whether or not you want to apply for a fee waiver, or whether or not you want to apply for technical assistance. So everyone who's received an eligibility letter, some people only apply for technical assistance. Some people only apply for fee waivers. For example, you can, if you don't have a permit or an embossed receipt, the only thing you can apply for is technical assistance. So everybody's different.
Oh, see, because when I first did the budget, I needed the fee waiver in a timely manner. And I was told that I had to fill out all 3, the eligibility, the direct, the fee, and the technical assistance in order for them to begin the review process.
Well, I don't know if you were told that was an incorrect statement. And the second thing is we have now changed the fee waiver process, which was the point that Bruce was making. We've decoupled the fee waiver process from the direct grant. So you do not have to apply for a fee waiver before you apply for a direct grant or vice versa. Those 2 things have been completely separated at this point.
Ah, the learning curve.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we really are working hard to speed up this process. I know it doesn't feel like it to you, but we spend every day. Ask William, we spend every day. How can we make this process faster?
Paula, William, this is Susan. May I ask a brief question?
Of course.
Okay, it's part question, part comment. Paula, William, you alluded to the situation where an awardee must spend all of the allocated grant within a 12-month window. We
Correct.
are not the only people in this situation. Our situation is that a good part of our grant was locked into doing that work before the season started. The season has now started.
Right.
There's no way that we can get that same help because their calendars are now filled for the whole year.
Right.
So when William, you mentioned that, be sure to let you know if that's the situation. That is the situation for many people. And we're trusting that you will be our advocates and make it possible for, number one, if we have to pay for those services after 12 months, say next January or February, we can do that. And number two, that will not pose a problem when we apply for the next round of grants, which we hope we'll be able to do. But a lot of people are sort of caught in this situation because of how long it took. For instance, 9 months in our situation. We're really glad that people only have to wait a month or two now. But, we're feeling very guinea piggish.
And as you should, since you got one of the 2 first grant checks. So you are rightfully identifying with the guinea pig. So, Susan, we will work with you. If you find that a year from, so I think you got your grant check in the month of February, is that correct?
It is, Paula.
Okay.
That was, that was, if I can just insert, forgive me for interrupting you, that was to have been in 2 tranches. It's going to be virtually impossible for us to bear the tax burden. We're going to have to try and borrow money. So, when we give those timelines, I think it's really important that we be very transparent, because for a lot of us, if we had an extra $14,000 or $15,000, truthfully, we would not have applied for the grant.
And just for clarification, I signed the contract in February, but I didn't actually get the check until the first week of March.
Okay, so it'll be from March.
Well, I was told that I could start spending the money out of my pocket and get reimbursed before I get the check. So as long as the receipt was dated after February 3rd when I signed the contract, and I didn't have to wait until I physically got the check to start. Now, is that accurate?
So Susan and Paul, I'm gonna have to review your circumstances separately. But let me answer the question that's relevant for the group.
Thank you.
If you find yourself, so let's use the contract signing date. If you signed your contract on February 3rd, it's my understanding, and I need to confirm this, that you have to spend the money by February 3rd of 2023. If you find in December of 2022 that it looks like you're not going to be able to do that, you need to tell us so that we can create what I'm assuming is going to be a grant extension. Now, I don't know for sure that it will be a grant extension. I have to go through the Board of Supervisors process, and I have to talk with Kristen and the Board of Supervisors. But we're not going to make you stop work in the middle of your project because your grant agreement is approaching deadline. But we do need to know if you're not going to be able to spend the money within 12 months so that if there is a grant extension that's going to be required, we can have that in place before February 3rd of 2023. If you wait until after that, then there's nothing we can do.
Thank you for clarifying that, Paula. And how will that affect our ability to apply for a second round of grant?
Well, I don't know. I'm hopeful that if additional grant monies are made available in 2022, and if we're able to raise that cap of 50,000, which I don't know if we can or cannot yet, if there is a new program that becomes available in 2022, you should have the opportunity to apply for that. If indeed the cap of 50,000 is raised, which I cannot tell you it will be. It depends on demand.
See, I misunderstood. I thought the $50,000 was for each program.
No,
you're telling me that if the 22-23 is going to be a separate program, isn't that another $50,000 that we'd be able to apply for, or that has
not been decided yet, Paul.
Really?
The answer is yes, potentially. The rules are not written yet. All right. Thank you so much, Paul and Susan, for calling in. We're going to be moving to our next call and caller. Joseph, you are now allowed to talk. Or I'm so sorry, you're allowed to unmute. Oh goodness, I'm so sorry. I clicked the wrong button. Now you're allowed to unmute.
Hi, yeah. So I had a question in regards to, I'm in the underwriting process, but I have an SUIR, which is a diversion or POD, diversion point of water, but it ends March 31st. And in my budget, which I'm working on submitting because I ran into some complications with getting all the quotes and stuff, I had put some water tanks and I would like to fill them, but the process seems, you know, so long and dragged out that if I submit that budget knowing that I won't be able to fill the water tanks for this season, and this is kind of what slowed my process down of getting in because I realized this early on. But the question is there a way to reimburse, say I bought the tanks to get them filled up before I can't take any more water during this massive drought? After March 31st, I can't take any more water. Is there a way to reimburse those tanks that would have been in the budget if I had been able to get it in time?
Right now, it is our understanding that costs cannot be reimbursed. So I would need to learn a little bit more about your grant approval process. So for example, if you know for a fact that you want to use part of your grant for these water tanks and you're worried that the grant won't be approved by the end of March and you need to spend the money before the end of March, I would not put the tanks on your budget because I don't think your grant will be approved before the end of March. Okay. That's only 10 days, right?
Yeah, I understood. I knew it was told. I was told that the whole process is 10 to 17 weeks from the time you submit the grant. So I figured I was somewhere in between that. So I just realized it wasn't going to happen. But that's why I was asking about the reimbursement, because it's such a pertinent issue to the season. You know, the season's upon us. The drought is here. The drought is real. And you guys are trying to help us, you know, because we've been disadvantaged. You know, I was arrested and I was done all this stuff to me and I had all these problems and they, you know, there was a medical.
Right.
Dad he died and the courts didn't take the evidence. And it's just been a headache to really be, you know, existing in this system. So I really like the grant idea because I think it's very valid to help us out. But then again, I can't seem to get help when I need it, which is now for the year. So hopefully I'll, you know, maybe there'll be some more.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so sorry to hear about all of the hardships. And that's exactly why this grant program was established, because of the hardships. So I would encourage you to create budget line items that will not require reimbursement, because it's my understanding that reimbursement is not allowed. So hopefully you can find other budget items beyond stuff that you have to spend money on before the end of March, because there's so many different budget items that you can choose. But you can work with your underwriter to determine, you know, other budget items.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you guys for all your time and I appreciate all your help.
Yeah, thank you for participating. I hope that we can get some money to you soon.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We have 3 more minutes
left.
Do you want me to go through these written questions as fast as I can?
Yeah, let's just see if we can get done with these 4 questions.
Okay. Yeah, so real quick, slide 4 with all the stats, the numbers, those are updated at every meeting. So yes, we will be providing that information at every meeting. Next question, you've not heard anything about your fee waiver grant. So the fee waiver process has changed dramatically, even in the last week. So what you should do is talk to your underwriter about getting the new fee waiver forms and submitting your fee waiver request on the new forms, whether it's the cannabis permit fees or whether it's the building and planning services fees. Next question is not a question, is it a new underwriter? So I'm gonna skip that one. Last one, if there's no grant extension, will you be liable for the work and have to return the money to the state? I highly doubt that once we've given money to entrepreneurs, we would have to return the money to the state. That would be unreasonable, but we do need to create the framework so that we can notify the state if somebody's bumping up against that 1-year deadline. So please, if you find yourself in a situation where you are not able to spend all of the grant funds by the by the 12-month deadline that William articulated, please let us know. I would say let us know 60 days before that 1-year expiration date. Thank you.
Well, that's the end of the questions. And I'm going to end the meeting 1 minute early.
Great.
All right. I thank everyone for coming to this. I thank you so much, Paula, Bruce, Stacy, Nina.
Great. Thank you guys, and keep the questions coming.
See you next month.
All righty, guys. Have a great day.